It was a cruel twist of fate, diverging from the expected course. The plan was simple: file those divorce papers, vanish into the ether. Yet, everything changed when my father-in-law fell ill. The transformation in my husband was stark. I couldn't fathom what I was hearing when he declared, "Tom and I will split his inheritance. You'll get nothing. There's no provision for a wife incapable of tending to her own home." Speechless, I sought solace in the city hall to initiate the divorce proceedings. But there, a grim revelation awaited me. My name is Nancy, a 24-year-old homemaker, wedded to Tom, age 40. Ours was what they call a May-December romance, devoid of the cinematic enchantment, simply a twist of fate. Fate intertwined when I found employment in Tom's father's construction firm. The company's patriarch took a liking to me, repeatedly urging me to wed his son. The motive? Tom was to inherit the company's reins, but lacked suitable marriage prospects. The patriarch fretted over the company's future, fearing its demise without an heir. Having known my father through professional circles, Tom's father personally sought my hand in marriage. With a lineage steeped in construction, my family's business intertwined with theirs for generations. My father, recalling the aid Tom's father extended in his youth, couldn't dismiss the proposal outright. However, respecting the age gap, my father insisted on a courtship period. He wanted Tom and me to forge a connection before committing to matrimony. Tom, aware of the marriage's significance to his ascension, acceded to my father's terms. Thus, Tom and I embarked on countless dates, dinners, movies, and shopping excursions. Over time, our bond strengthened, convincing us that marriage was the natural next step. We were soon engaged. Yet, just as we embraced our impending union, Tom's father's health deteriorated, relegating him to the confines of the hospital. With Tom occupied by work and my mother unable to drive, the burden of caregiving fell squarely on my shoulders. As his fiancé, I found myself thrust into the role of caregiver for my ailing father-in-law in the hospital. My future mother-in-law wasted no time in reminding me of my impending duties as the family's caretaker, admonishing me for what she deemed subpar housekeeping skills, a glaring shortcoming for someone set to marry into the family. "Nancy, hurry. The morning visiting hours are ending." "Take him," she barked, her tongue dripping with expectation. Despite feeling more like a servant than a prospective daughter-in-law, I obliged, plastering on a strained smile as I muttered assurances and rushed to start the car. Days blurred into one another as I tended to my father-in-law's needs. Then, one day, my mother-in-law proposed that I move in, citing the convenience it would afford in caring for him. Though it seemed premature, the thought of shuttling back and forth between my parents' home and the hospital weighed heavily on me. Reluctantly, I agreed, rationalizing that I would likely be moving in soon anyway. I had assumed our wedding would wait until my father-in-law's health improved, so why not formalize our union while I settled in? There were no whispers of Tom having past relationships, but living under the same roof with him revealed stark truths. At 40, he lacked any prior romantic entanglements, a fact that quickly became evident as his stinginess and obsession with finances surfaced. Tom meticulously tracked our expenses, scrutinizing every penny spent on dates, meals, and even gas. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law's penchant for belittling me, her sharp sarcasm ever present, made the home environment oppressive. Yet, Tom's generosity knew no bounds when it came to his mother, turning a blind eye to her extravagant spending on travel and luxury items. I couldn't help but wonder if Tom's unwavering devotion to his mother bordered on obsession, a realization that left me questioning the haste with which I'd agreed to marry into this complicated dynamic. I reasoned that moving in before tying the knot would allow me to better understand their quirks and household dynamics. Yet, contemplating my father's unconditional love for me alongside my father-in-law's situation left me at a loss for words. That particular day, I prepared to take my ailing father-in-law to the hospital, his condition worsening since the previous day. Amidst my preparations, my mother-in-law's treatment of me as a mere housekeeper grated on my nerves. "Nancy, have you made breakfast yet? The way you cleaned yesterday was unacceptable. Can you hurry up and just do it?" she demanded, her eyes glued to the television while Tom sat idly beside her. "I'm sorry, I don't have time. I have to take your husband to the hospital," I replied, attempting to maintain composure despite my rising frustration. "Well then, shouldn't you have gotten up earlier?" "I have to go out as well. Make us breakfast before you leave," she retorted. oblivious to the strain her words placed on me. I couldn't help but wonder why they couldn't handle some tasks themselves, their indifference toward their own husband and father baffling me. "Father-in-law, please wait a moment. I'll be finished in a minute," I murmured, rushing to prepare breakfast and serve it to Tom and my mother-in-law. Only after attending to their needs did I turn my attention to my father-in-law, helping him to his feet. "I'm sorry for making you work so much. I have to apologize to your father too," he said, moments before collapsing. "Are you okay?" I asked, fear gripping my heart as I rushed to his side, the weight of responsibility heavy on my shoulders. I was appalled to see my mother-in-law and husband carry on with breakfast as if nothing had occurred. My mind went blank, overwhelmed by the situation, until the wailing sirens of the ambulance snapped me back to reality. As the ambulance arrived a few minutes later, my husband hurriedly declared, "Sorry, Nancy, I have to leave. You handle the rest. I've got work to attend to, so please lock up." With that, they departed, leaving me alone with my stricken father-in-law. Upon our arrival at the hospital, he had regained consciousness and was promptly admitted. By the time the hospital procedures and explanations from the doctors concluded, darkness had descended outside. "I want to leave you something, Nancy, as a token of my apology for subjecting you to my ungrateful son and wife," my father-in-law murmured weakly as we sat together on his hospital bed. "I've been too preoccupied with work to truly understand what's been happening at home," he confessed, expressing regret for pushing me to marry Tom. Before long, Tom and my mother-in-law entered the room, their concern palpable as they inquired about my father-in-law's condition. Viewing them as family, I reassured them, "He'll be fine. He just needs some rest, and he'll be out of the hospital soon." I recounted the doctor's prognosis to them, though it seemed that Tom's disapproval and my mother-in-law's disappointment were palpable, even if only in my perception. Days later, as I prepared to visit my father-in-law, both Tom and my mother-in-law handed me a document with green ruled lines, a divorce decree. "It's what you've been wanting all along, isn't it? To marry someone so much older than you. But your plan didn't work out," Tom sneered, revealing that he had overheard the conversation at the hospital. "My father intended to leave you a portion of his inheritance, but we won't give you a cent. Just go file for divorce and be done with it." He spat venomously, his words laced with profanity. I was dumbfounded. His sudden outburst caught me off guard. "What?" I stammered, struggling to comprehend the betrayal unfolding before me. Unfazed by my disbelief, Tom persisted, "Just go to the government office. We'll divide my father's inheritance equally. There's no one else to share it with, and there's certainly no money for a wife who can't even manage her own household." The words I heard were appalling. Despite my father-in-law's imminent discharge from a hospital, their conversation hinted at an expectation of his demise, sending shivers down my spine. "How can you be so heartless? He's your family. He'll recover when he comes home," I protested, trying to dispel the ominous aura. And their insinuation that I coveted their inheritance stung deeply. "Don't mock me with such accusations. Inheritance is the last thing on my mind," I retorted, seething with indignation. This marriage was never my desire to begin with. With determination, I rushed to the municipal office after completing the divorce papers. I needed to sever ties with these people, to extricate them from my life at once. But upon submission, the receptionist's perplexed expression hinted at an unexpected snag. My name didn't match their records. Confusion mounted until I provided my maiden name, which aligned perfectly. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. We had never been legally married. As I saw answers from my mother-in-law, her nonchalant response was infuriating. "Oh, I completely forgot. I've had it all this time," she casually admitted, her lack of accountability infuriating. I couldn't hold back. "You deliberately withheld it, treating me like a servant. But now you jest as if it's a trivial matter." I lashed out, the frustration boiling over. Her laughter on the other end of the line only fueled my ire. It was clear she harbored no remorse. She needn't fret about her share of the inheritance, she chuckled, her words dripping with disdain. The sound of Tom's boisterous laughter grated on my nerves, fueling a simmering rage within me. I refused to let them get away with their deception. Calling my father, I implored him to accompany me to the government office. With a quick explanation, I hung up and watched as my father rushed in, his surprise evident. In front of my father, I demanded an explanation from the person who had assisted me moments ago. Armed with a certificate of residence, I uncovered the truth. Not only had my name been omitted, but my address remained unchanged. I had been deceived into believing that because I had registered my marriage, my address had not altered during my time in that house. Yet, I was burdened with the label of Tom's wife and forced to endure relentless toil. Faced with the inheritance issue, I was abruptly told to leave. The injustice of it all left me reeling, and even my typically mild-mannered father was incensed. Together, we hurried to the hospital where my father-in-law lay. Upon our arrival, my father-in-law, noticing my father's presence, offered polite words, unaware of the storm brewing within us. As my father explained the situation, my father-in-law's expression shifted from calm to agitation. We convened in his hospital room, deliberating on the repercussions for Tom and my mother-in-law, who hadn't visited him since his hospitalization. In a surprising turn, Tom's father proposed a solution to my father, recognizing that Tom was unfit to assume the mantle of family heir. He sought to entrust my father with the responsibility of safeguarding his business. Thankfully, the profitability of Tom's father's enterprise meant that a merger with my father's business would entail no loss. As long as the company endured in some form, Tom's father deemed it an acceptable outcome. Given Tom's character, customers and employees would likely depart if he assumed control, spelling doom for the company. In light of this, the choice was clear. Tom was not fit to lead. I made a decision, one that I believed was essential for our family's future. It was the most effective means to safeguard the company from falling into the hands of our less scrupulous relatives. Tom's father erupted into laughter, announcing his intention to divorce. She's so fixated on money that she spends her days indulging in luxury, neglecting her husband. She's getting what she deserves, he declared, seeking validation from my father and me. We exchanged knowing glances, silently acknowledging that this was a fitting retribution. The legal team and accountants my father had enlisted sprang into action the following day. After careful deliberation, it was decided to merge Tom's father's company with ours, retaining our family name. Tom, stripped of his vice presidency, was promptly dismissed, while a promising executive from our ranks assumed his position. The final decisions would await Tom's father's return to work, catching Tom and his mother completely off guard. Thus commenced the countdown to their downfall. 2 weeks later, my father-in-law made a full recovery and was discharged from the hospital. Accompanied by my father, I completed the discharge formalities and drove him home. Upon arrival, my mother-in-law was conspicuously absent, and Tom was immersed in his work as usual. Their callousness was palpable. Little did they know that the following day they would rue their heartless actions. Returning to my original workplace the next morning, I found a new vice president in place. Tom's father presided over a morning meeting, revealing the company's fate and the changes to come. Tom, clutching a termination letter, and my mother-in-law, holding a divorce decree, were left dumbfounded. "Dad, what's going on? What were you thinking?" Tom exclaimed, bewildered by the sudden turn of events. I was caught off guard by the sudden outburst. "I didn't hear about this. How could this be happening so suddenly? What were you thinking?" I exclaimed, bewildered by the turn of events. The entire conference room fell silent, shocked to see Tom and his mother-in-law ranting in front of everyone. But amidst the chaos, Tom's father remained composed. "That's exactly the kind of lunacy I was hoping for," he remarked with a smirk, eyes glinting with satisfaction. As soon as they caught sight of me, accusations flew. "It's you. You did something, didn't you? Just because you wouldn't get your inheritance," they accused, pointing fingers. "I didn't do anything. You guys started all this," I countered, growing increasingly frustrated by their baseless accusations. Sensing the tension, Tom's father intervened, his tone firm. "That's enough. You're disturbing the morning meeting. Both of you outside," he ordered, his gaze icy. Reluctantly, Tom and his mother-in-law were escorted out by nearby employees. Once they regained their composure, they sought forgiveness from both me and Tom's father. But I had no intention of accepting their hollow apologies, choosing instead to ignore them. Despite their persistence, they gradually stopped showing up at the company. Security measures were tightened, barring their entry, and they were asked to vacate their home by Tom's father. They now reside in a humble apartment near their former residence. Meanwhile, I've resumed a peaceful life as an office worker, while my father, still seething with anger, is preparing to file a compensation claim against Tom and his mother-in-law for their actions. Their lives have spiraled into despair, a stark contrast to the tranquility I now enjoy. It seems their reckoning has begun. And while I harbor no ill will, I won't extend a helping hand either. Perhaps they've learned the hard way that the way one treats others inevitably returns to haunt them.